Dropping it.
Yeah.
Where are we dropping, boys?
All right.
Is this a water prison or a normal prison run?
All right. Welcome to Wednesday Night Teen Church. As you can see, this is a little bit of a different one than normal, but kind of a throwback to a couple weeks ago when we did a podcast-style video like this. Heard some good feedback, so we figured we'd give it another shot. A couple real quick announcements before we get into it. Camp. We're looking at July 6th through July 11th. So that's the dates we're looking at. I know that's pretty short notice, and we're still not 100% sure that it's going to happen. But what we need from you, like right now, is just to let me know if you're planning on going. We're going to figure out the forms and money and all that other stuff in the coming weeks. But right now, if you are saying, I want to go to that, I think I could go to that, please let me know. July 6th through 11th. It's going to be Jim Shetler. It's going to be an awesome time. Also, very exciting news. 2 weeks from tonight, we're actually going to be able to meet together for Wednesday Night Teen Church. Unless something crazy happens, that's the current plan. Again, obviously, we've had plans that have fallen through already, but as of right now, plan is 2 weeks from tonight, actually being able to have Teen Church in person. It's going to be awesome. We're looking forward to it. You guys ready for Rona to be over? Anything else?
Yes.
They're with me with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And no.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Are you ready to eat in a restaurant again?
Yes.
We don't do it.
Yeah. Go to a store.
I'm ready for Wednesday night service, to be honest.
Not wear a mask.
Yeah. Not wearing a mask is going to be
That's
huge.
Anybody
Yeah.
burning their masks after this is done? Or?
I am.
Yeah.
Mask burning party.
Yeah, man. So,
You burn your
out-
textbooks and we'll burn
Bring
our
out your
masks.
masks.
yeah. No, we're
Bring out
excited
your
to be in person again. I'm thankful for technology, obviously, but us, like you, are getting quite sick of it and ready for back to in person. So we have a couple things we wanted to talk about. First, a couple real quick silly questions that I actually got from teens. So, Mr. Leaf, pump or tack in Fortnite?
Depends on the situation.
Which one is?
Depends on the situation.
You can
If
only
it's
have
still
one whole game.
whole game
Yeah.
tack.
Tack.
You're one of those guys.
Yeah, sorry.
All right.
Tack.
Early on, tack's better. Get to the end, I think pump just because it's a little more effective.
Okay. The DJ favorite zombie map of all time.
I mean, there are so many to choose from, but I honestly like 5 minutes later. 9. I like 9.
Really?
9.
Black Ops 4.
Yes.
It's a solid one.
Yeah.
IX? Well played.
IX. Yep.
So Josh, what's your favorite spot to drop in Warzone?
Without a shadow of a doubt, it's a prison game.
It's always a prison.
Always a prison game, no matter what. Right? Right? Optical cannon? That's right. Okay.
You know who you are.
Yeah.
All right. To a little bit more serious. For the DJ, what's your favorite New Testament Bible character? The last time you said Old Testament characters, so figure this time be a little more specific.
So, this is going to sound very, I don't know, not original, traditional, but I can't pass up Paul, just because Paul, he just sets the standard for just love for people and just reaching out for the cause of Christ. It's such a good character, good person to just look up to and strive to be like. His love for people, it didn't stop him when he was in prison. It didn't stop him no matter how much he got persecuted. Just his drive and his overall just determination and passion for what God had for him and what he was doing for the cause of Christ. I mean, it's hard to say anyone but Paul for me, personally.
No, Paul is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think about Paul a little bit just with what's going on today. You know, Paul is a guy that hated and killed Christians, but after he spent time with Jesus, loved people and cared for people. It's just one of those good reminders that we need Jesus. So.
Yeah.
There's a reason why
God
he's
can
named
use
so many
anybody.
times.
Yeah.
Right. Mr. Leaf, the whole Bible's open to you. Favorite Bible
Whole
character?
Bible's open to me.
Yeah.
I always go with Joseph. Joseph is my favorite Bible character. Just the perseverance that he had amidst all of the trials that he went through, and some of them so severe as he did, he still remained faithful to God. And that was always his focus, and the example that sets for us, that no matter what we go through in life, the vast majority of us will never touch anything near what Joseph did, and yet he remained faithful, and because of that, we see where God ended up leading him and placing him.
Yeah. no, Joseph. There's a reason Joseph's a good favorite of many Bible scholars and Christians. He's such a good example.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, New Testament favorite Bible character.
Joseph. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Hey, Jesus' dad.
No, I'm just kidding.
He was a good guy.
There is something to say there, actually.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding though. But is John the Baptist, and it's I mean, he's awesome. He's a man, ate locusts and wild honey, all that good stuff. Preached in the wilderness. People from the city would go to the wilderness for days just to hear him preach. That's just awesome. But at the end of his life, he even doubted. He said, I'll read these verses real quick. Matthew 11:2-3. Now when John heard in the prison the works of Christ, he sent 2 of his disciples and said unto him, Art thou he that should come, or do we look for another? So even like John being as good as he was, or as powerful and as moving as he was, and called of God as he was, he still was human and doubted even, and came to God for the answers. So it's a reminder to me that even though I mess up all the time and stuff, I gotta go to God for the answers, because even someone great like John the Baptist did, so I can't do. So
Yeah. It's always awesome to see the flaws or quirks that the heroes of the faith that we look up to had. All right, awesome. So we have a couple things we wanted to talk about, some kind of just ideas that are important to you guys where you're at, and kind of got the ideas or the question out of Proverbs chapter 22. So it's going to somewhat be not a text, for the night, I guess, but just kind of where a lot of these ideas are coming from. But verse number 1 of Proverbs 22 says, "A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold." And the whole chapter really just talks about how to build a life testimony, how to build character, how to, I even think of the last verse 29 says, "Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men." And it's an awesome chapter about building a life of character and building that kind of a testimony. And with that in mind, we had a couple of quick things that we wanted to talk about, ideas I wanted to bounce off of these 3 youth workers who love you so much and want the absolute best for you. I've mentioned that, haven't I? That you ought to listen to the people that love you and have your best interests in mind. And I'm so thankful for the youth workers we have and how they sacrifice of their time, they sacrifice of their efforts, blood, sweat, and tears, for you guys, because they love you and they have important things to say because they love God and they love you. All right, so first, with so many that walk away from the faith after high school, how can we help and how can we point the teens in the right direction to where they won't be a statistic, where they won't be one of the many that just wind up walking away from faith later? DJ, just kind of start there and go down the line a little bit.
I feel like there was 3 different questions there, but just kind of start from how can we point you guys into that place where you don't want to walk away when you have to make that choice? I mean, we can pretty much just tell you things that you've always heard that are very, very familiar to you. Like, you need to be in your Bible, reading your Bible, praying to God, having that relationship with Him, talking to Him, being in church, being around people that actually want your best interests in mind. We were talking about this earlier too. Sometimes, you could have the best setup in the world, but then you get into the wrong crowd, the wrong type of friends. And those friends kind of lead you just, inching your way kind of off the path. And then before you know it, you're way far away and you don't even know how you got there. One of the most important things that we could tell you, besides all the normal, pray, read your Bible, be in church, is to surround yourself with people that care about you and your best interests, whether it be friends, teachers, youth workers, coaches, whoever it is. Personally, from my life, there was a point in my life where my father really didn't go to church anymore. He kind of just, kind of like I said, he's just inched his way out of church, just didn't really care about the things of God anymore. But my mom kept me in church, and because my mom kept me in church, I was able to get closer to people like Pastor Brent. Pastor Brent was my youth pastor. He helped me through quite a bit. John Bronsing was my basketball coach in high school. He actually helped me through more than I could possibly even be grateful to him for. There's just so many different events that could have gone wrong for me, but because I tried to surround myself with friends and people that cared about me and were a good influence on me, it was a very huge deal in me making my choice at the end of the day that I was going to choose the lifestyle of being in church and being a Christian and living for God and trying to do everything I can for Him. So I know that was a lot there, but that's basically just from my heart. Just this is how I was able to make that choice and be in when I was there with my experiences growing up. So
Yeah. Makes me think about in Proverbs 22, just where it says, verse 24 and 25, it says, "Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul." Obviously, that's kind of the negative of it, but the positive of that is true too, that the people you choose to spend time with, have an effect on you. And if you choose the right people, that's going to help you to stay on track. So, Leif, did you have a thought about just how to...
I guess coming from me, the first word that comes to mind for me is love. And that's just the fact that, as far as us as leaders and even those teen leaders that aren't here, but the fact that we show you love, and hopefully that you recognize that love and the fact that we do care about you, that we do care about your future, and that we don't come in here on Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights just as a way to pass time so we don't have to sit in the auditorium. There are times that I would love to be able to go sit and hear a pastor preach, but to have examples for you guys to be able to see of how we live our lives and the things that we do. And the next thing that I would say would be then that realism of a relationship with Christ. That, we don't carry a Bible to church just so that we have it when we're here, but when you go home, you still use that. That you still take that time to read His Word, and not just to check the box, but to have an understanding of something that He can hand you each and every day that you can apply to your life. And if you can get that basis down and then take that love that others have shown you and love God with that same love, and love others as well, really will take you a far way. But just for that relationship to be real in your heart when you go off to be by yourself, and not something that you do because mom and dad told me to, or because Brother Will, Miss Megan told me to, or because whatever youth worker or leader in the church told you to do it, but because you recognize from God's Word why you do those things.
Right. It has to be yours.
It has to be completely you.
Right.
It can't be because somebody asked you to do it, but because you recognize what you need to do and how you need to do it and why you need to do it.
Right. I even think about sports. You guys are basketball coaches. Like the ones that make the biggest growth and the ones that become the key players. Is it the ones that don't practice over the summer, or is it the ones that it's theirs? Like they want to improve at basketball. Like they really put in the time themselves outside of practice, outside of when they're being forced to, and those are the ones that really thrive and grow. Yeah, definitely. It has to be yours. Josh, you have a thought there on?
Whenever I think of choosing, which has kind of been their points, is just DJ chose to have the good friends. Brother Layton's saying, you have to choose your examples to follow. And it's really just a choice. And the person I always go back to is Moses. It says, when he was come to years, chose not to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. We all have, I don't want to say have grown up in church, but we've all been in church at least a little bit. So we see the good. Moses didn't even see good. He literally just heard God and chose God over the world, and he had the whole world at his hands. So it's mind-boggling to me that he did that, but it says when he was come to years, he chose. So in my opinion, you need to start choosing God. You're going to choose one or the other, and if you're not going to choose God, you are going to choose Egypt or the world or whatever it is, but it's time to choose.
Mm-hmm.
So
yep. I think about Proverbs 22 verse 3 says, "A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on are punished." And by humility and the fear of the Lord are riches, honor, and life. It's just choosing to make the right decisions, choosing to follow God's plan, choosing to follow God's path, and not just walk towards sin in the world. And Moses is a great example there. A similar thought, probably similar concept, but things that you guys wish you knew when you were a teen, or maybe even a different way to say it, let's do it. Let's start with there. Things that you wish you knew when you were a teen. If you could go back in time and tell your teenage self something, what would it be? We'll just go back down the line. Brother DJ, what's your thoughts there?
I wish that I had told myself as a teenager, if I could go back, I would tell myself that you really don't know that much. There is so much on this planet, so many things in this Bible that you just don't understand when you're a teenager until, I mean, hopefully you don't have to experience them. Like if it's a bad situation, hopefully you don't have to experience that bad consequence to your action. Hopefully you can read from someone or read from the Bible or learn from someone not to do something. But overall, I wish I'd known that I don't know that much. You know, as a teenager, I thought I had it all figured out. You know, that thought crosses your mind sometimes. You really don't have things figured out. You have to constantly be humbled, have that the humility to be wrong about things, to be like, oh yeah, I don't understand what's going on. I don't really know the full picture of certain things. It can be anything too. It could be, things about, this rule that your parents gave you. It's like, well, I don't know why there's this rule. I don't know why they're trying to do this. Like, listen, you don't really know that much. And I hate this. I hope that doesn't sound harsh, but your parents have been through a lot more than you have. All these youth workers have been on this earth longer than you have. Josh may not be that much longer, but he has still been here longer and he has experienced more things. So what I'm trying to say is just don't turn away advice from people who love you and people who want to have the best for you. There may be rules that you don't agree with. That's just a part of life. There may be things that aren't fair. Listen, you don't really know that much at this point. Be willing, be humble to listen and to learn from others who have been here longer than you. And hopefully, you have the good influences in your life that you choose to have, like Josh was saying, so that you can accept their advice and be willing to apply that. And I guess just to end it off, just the being willing to know that, the Bible is such a rich book in terms of knowledge and wisdom. There are people here who still don't understand the full intent of the Bible, the full knowledge and wisdom that the Bible has to offer. We're all still learning. So that, right now when you're a teenager, you need to be willing to accept that as well, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's just a good, helpful reminder. And it's not harsh because we've all been there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Experience. Not saying like, you don't know anything. I did. I knew everything. No, it's like, that's just something we go through. You think you know everything, and then life hits you like a ton of bricks, and you realize that you just didn't. I think about, learning things about the Bible. I don't know if you've heard this before. Brother Hal, they used to play a game in the car on evangelism. Him and Jeremiah and Miss Karen, they play Bible trivia. Mm-hmm. And so for Jeremiah or Miss Karen to get a question right and get a point, they just had to answer the question. Brother Hal had to give the chapter and verse reference of the question. And Brother Hal still won most of the time. Like, trivia question could give chapter and verse, and I still love that he preaches and he'll say, like, this really stuck out to me. Like, I learned this. Mm-hmm. That he knows his Bible so well, he can give you chapter and verse for, like, every trivia question, but he still gets things out of it. Mm-hmm. And, no, that's just a good reminder. So if you have thoughts there on...
For a second, I thought I was going to have to pass to Brother Josh. I could not find the verse that I wanted to do. I don't know why, but for me, I think it's a lot of understanding the fact that as a teenager, now is the time to grow up. Obviously, I was with my past. I was forced to grow up a little early, and I did to a degree. But it would have been nice to have known, I guess, ahead of time that I needed to. That once you get to that 18 or 17 or however old you are when you do head off to college or on your own or whatever your path may be, but understanding that at that point you have to take care of yourself in the world. I just think back to when Jesus was left behind and in Jerusalem, and his parents went to find him. And when we end that in Luke chapter 2, verse 51, it says, "And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subject unto them. But his mother kept all these sayings in her heart." Verse 52, "And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man." Just that word, he increased. The fact that he increased in wisdom, he increased in stature, he increased in favor with both God and man. He continued to increase in those things. He didn't, turn 13, 14, become a teenager and just go with the flow until it was time to move on. No, he increased in those things so that when he became a man, so that when he was on his own, he was prepared for the world. There were certain places where I was definitely prepared for the world when I turned 17 and went off to college on my own. But there are a lot of things that I was not prepared for. And I had to learn. I had to learn fast, and I had to learn on the fly. And my prayer would be that wouldn't be the results for any of you guys, but that rather when you became a man or a young woman, that you would be prepared and understand that at that point you're an adult. It's not time to become an adult once you are. That's when you've got to be able to hold your own baton and carry it.
Yeah. No, just take that time that you're at home and use
take the time you have now.
Yeah.
And use it wisely.
Yeah. I think that is a reason why, going back a little bit, why some of you walk away from the faith is they're not ready or prepared, to answer the questions they're going to get at college, to deal with the problems they're going to face. The issues and problems you face in high school, by and large, they're issues, they're problems, but when you get to where you're running a household and are dealing with those things face on, I think that is a reason why a lot walk away, is because they're not prepared and ready for that. So yeah, definitely use this time to get ready. Yeah. Josh, you have a thought on that? Things you wish you knew?
Or is it things that I wish that I knew, or things I wish I told myself?
Either.
Things I wish I told myself is stop talking. You're really annoying. Okay, I just want to get that out of the way.
Not talking to you specifically.
Oh no, me. I was saying that to me, not to them.
Okay.
But that's things I wish I told myself. DJ knows.
Yeah.
But just stop talking. You're annoying. But not you specifically. This is how I feel sometimes about myself. But one thing that Leighton just brought up, which I thought was really good, is he grew in stature with favoring God and man. But one previous to that verse, when they're looking for Jesus, it says, "I was about my Father's business," and I think that is truly just one of the coolest guidelines. Just what was Jesus doing when he was a kid, when he was a teen? What was he doing? He was being about his Father's business, which is God. So it's just I feel like that's pretty simple. Just be about God's business, whether it be praying, going to church, watching the YouTube because we're in coronavirus, whatever it is. Be about God's business and having good fellowship because with God's people. That's being about God's business. I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it says directed at the steps of a good man. It's a person that's walking, a person that's doing what they're supposed to be doing, a person that's trusting God and walking with God. And yeah, no, that's awesome. Even think about the servant in Genesis 24. It says I being in the way the Lord led me. Just being where you're supposed to be and doing what you're supposed to do keeps you out of a lot of trouble and out of a lot of problems.
This just came to mind. We focus a lot on spiritual aspects, but just thinking through my head about things that I wish I knew as a teenager. If there's one thing I could emphasize, stuff is not important. Things are just not that important. Y'all could might be better to ask Mrs. Leaf than to ask me, but just ask her about when we started dating and the things that I wanted, the stuff that I wanted. And I can remember, calling her when there was something I wanted, and I wasn't taught how to handle money. And I had the money for it. I wanted it. I stood in Best Buy. The thing was open box. I called her to get her advice and then didn't follow it because I wanted the object. I can laugh about it now, but really thinking back on it, it's just it was a hard road for me a hard row for me to hoe is the statement to learn that one. But just the fact that we live in a society that focuses greatly on objects, things that we need, when in actuality we don't need them. When you really break down and think about it, you don't need a new phone every year. They'll last longer than that. I know that for a fact, but it was a hard thing for me to admit to, and even still today I struggle with it sometimes. But if you can get your head wrapped around the fact that not every object that the television or the computer or whatever tells you need, that you don't actually need those things, that's a good thing to grasp now.
Yeah. Was that item a comfortable couch?
It was not. It was here. I'm going to show my age. It was a PDA.
Whoa.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know what that is, I'm with you. Okay. So there you go.
That was basically one of these that didn't make phone calls, but it required one of these in order to do anything on it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it beeped.
Yeah.
Oh, it beeped? I like it.
This is
Wait.
Primarily for email. Am I thinking right?
No, this had no internet connectivity whatsoever.
Oh.
This was.
What?
Tell me
You know,
more.
it's bad enough knowing I'm the oldest person in the room, because the thing we have to realize is I was married when all of you were in grade school.
I hate it.
Let that settle in. Matter of fact, Brother DJ was in my 5th grade Discovery Wednesday night class.
Yep.
The
long
first year
time
of our
ago.
marriage.
Yep.
But I was actually going to try to avoid saying that. But no, it was just basically one of the first pocket-sized personal computers. I took notes on it and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Computer without internet.
Yes, imagine now a
continue.
computer without internet.
Wrap your mind around that one.
We have completely sidelined here.
Yeah, but no, it goes back just that our kind of key verse for the night. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold. You know, living a life that pleases God is better than stuff. You know, having a
Absolutely.
testimony where you've helped and cared for people is more valuable than stuff. You know, there have been a lot of millionaires that have existed, you know, in American history, but the people that really stick out in a positive way, you know, aren't millionaires. It's people that made a difference in the life of other people. People that, you know, stuck their necks out for others and helped others and were there for others. And yeah, a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. No, that's a good reminder. Maybe last question, then we'll wrap this up for tonight. What's something that you heard a bunch when you were a teen, but you didn't listen to, or maybe not specifically you, but something maybe you think of teens that hear something over and over again, but just something that doesn't click until long after. Anybody have a thought on that one?
You're annoying. Stop talking. No, I'm just kidding.
Not
Josh,
you.
stop talking about yourself.
Yeah.
No, to bring it back though, one thing that I do think that some teens, not all teens by any means, but some teens, like when we do say like watch your friends or watch who you're gonna date or watch those things, like one thing I don't think they listen to is the spiritual aspect of it. So like if the person or your friend isn't pushing you towards Christ or isn't just even like genuinely asking like, hey, are you all right, man? You know, is everything okay? Like that's a base. You need to like develop into spiritual friends. Like me and Brother Will, we're accountability partners. Like literally I can go to him with anything. And the same thing with DJ. And like literally these are my friends and we've grown spiritually, but it's only because like we've chosen to. Like we've chosen to become friends and we've chosen that because we know we're trying to walk with the Lord. So that'd just be my thing. It's like choose the people that will walk with you in the Lord.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I got.
Yeah.
You do not, no matter what your friends tell you, you do not need a boyfriend or girlfriend. Just gonna throw that out there. You do not need it. Heading out into Bible college, I was told so many times, you know, you are more than likely gonna find your spouse in Bible college. And that was fed to me so much that I walked through the door the first day assuming she was gonna just show up. Now, and it's not like she's just gonna just walk up to me and be like,
there she is.
I'm it. No. And
Where's Waldo?
the crazy thing is I make that statement, but prior to school actually starting at Midwestern my freshman year, they had found out I knew how to run a sound system, whatever, different things like that. I had gone over to the school, into the school building to get something, to do something, and when I opened the door, Mrs. Leaf was sitting in a chair in the front foyer. And I can remember the thought going through my head that she's a beautiful lady, you know, beautiful young woman, whatever. And the very next thought in my head was, I don't stand a chance. and that was more or less it. But, you know, I went into Bible college assuming that I needed to hurry up and find my spouse. And it wasn't until I determined that I didn't need to do that and I needed to focus on school. And then it wasn't but a month later that Mrs. Leaf and I got together, started dating, and then a year later we were married. So you just need to realize that you don't need, for lack of a better way of putting it, you don't need that baggage. Certainly not as a teenager, if I can say that. I'm of the opinion that you date or you court or whatever word you want to use for the purpose of finding a spouse. You cannot get married at 15 years old. Just the way it is here in the United States, it's not going to happen. You might as well wait until you at least can get married to look for a spouse.
Yeah.
Just and again, my opinion, I'm guilty. I had girlfriends as a teenager, but in the wisdom and the things that I've learned over the years, no, you do not need that until the time comes.
Yeah. Like there are times when it works out, but there's also a lot of times.
There are way more times that it doesn't.
Yeah.
And I will admit that yes, there are times that the high school sweetheart or whomever does end up together, and by all means,
I mean, it's kind of crazy that you brought up dating, because that's kind of what I was going to go along the lines of. Like, as a teen, like, you always hear, like, you know, you're going to find your spouse in Bible college, don't be dating in high school, and, you know, just fill in, you know, insert cliche about dating in high school in church here, you know, like, but honestly, like, since you know, obviously me and Misky were dated in high school, and when we talk to people about high school dating and stuff, it kind of shocks people when we're kind of on the same page that we are an exception to the rule. That's not something that, you know, that shocks people. We are an exception. The statistics are clear that, you know, when you date in high school, there's a lot more risk of, you know, falling apart, you know, having a bad, you know, decision or whatever. Like, there's just so many variables that can go wrong. But it's not necessary to date in high school. You don't have to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend in high school. And on top of that, like, me and Megan, like, you know, obviously we're new parents, and Dakota still has a long way to go before she starts dating. Okay. But we're kind of on the same page. We don't really want her to date in high school. And it's just because we've been through it, and we realize how much temptation there is, how much, you know, room there is to do wrong and to not abide by God's, you know, rules of purity and stuff like that in the Bible. It's just not a good thing that teenagers should have to go through. And Leighton mentioned baggage. There's so much responsibility with having a girlfriend or a boyfriend. You know, if you really want to, like, you know, be friends with them and, like, you know, be like a thing, it takes a lot of responsibility and maturity when you're in high school to do that. Not many high schoolers have that, like, you know, inner maturity and inner, you know, just the drive and determination to stay pure in high school. And I know it sounds crazy coming from us, because you're like, well, you dated in high school and it worked out for you. But like I said before, just because it happened to us doesn't make us the rule. It makes us the exception.
Right.
That's just something that, you know, you really have to focus when stuff like this happens. And it's by God's grace that we didn't make a huge mistake in high school. It really is. I can't tell you how much temptation there is when you're dating in high school. So it's just crazy that, you know, Mr. Leaf kind of mentioned that, because that's basically what I wish, you know, that, you know, it didn't really click until we were married. It's just like, wow, how young and how, for lack of a better word, dumb we were, you know, like, it's just all these situations that we could have avoided, you know. But at the same time, God had a plan for us. He brought us together, and we're happily married now. We didn't, you know, make that huge mistake that, you know, most people make, you know, and we stayed pure until we were married. So, I mean, it's just God's grace, but, you know.
Even with staying pure, there still tends to be a lot of heartache and a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of broken friendships that don't need to be had. I mean, your entire class, if you will, as you grow up, as you go through school, especially in, for the sake of it, a smaller Christian school where you basically know everybody that's in your class, why ruin friendships that you have because you wanted to date for 6 months or a year or 2 years or whatever, and then when you break up, all of a sudden you're not supposed to be friends anymore. And it doesn't work. I know I've seen friends of my own that ruin friendships because they decided to date or whatever, because now all of a sudden you have to be enemies. It can't be a consensual breakup and stuff. And why have that when you don't need to?
Yeah. I think something interesting you mentioned about, like, the responsibility of it too. It's one of those funny things that you focus on the happy part of it, the fun part of it, the enjoyable part of it. You know, but there are a lot of responsibilities. It's one of those deals as a teenager, like, you need to figure out how to walk with God. You need to figure out how to, you know, live an adult life. You need to figure out how to do all these different really important things that need to be in place before a successful relationship can happen. And jumping the gun to a relationship can really just land you in a world where
if you don't have a steady, consistent walk with God prior to having that walk with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, you won't have a steady, consistent walk with God. Especially, and I don't want to offend any teenagers, but as immature young people, there's this feeling that they have to be the most important person. As far as people in regards, Mrs. Leaf is the most important person to me, yes. But, I have to make my decisions based off of what God says in His Word, not off of what may or may not hurt mine or Mrs. Leaf's, or even, for the sake of it, my children's feelings.
Right.
If we go even further in the future for you guys.
Yeah. So this is maybe too intense or harsh of a word, but when you're in a relationship with somebody and you don't have that walk with God, I think the tendency can be where that person can kind of become an idol
Yes.
in your life.
Very much so.
Where they get the attention and love and affection that really should be reserved for God, and then after you give that to God, then this important person. But
because it's like you said, you're trying to learn to walk with God, but then you're walking with your boyfriend and girlfriend, and you find out that you don't have time for both. You don't have as much time as you think, and that's just one of the things. Like I said before, you really don't know that much. I wish I had known, but I really don't know. I didn't know what I was doing. And this is a time when you're a young person. This is when you need to be molded to walk with God, because it's very, very. I'm not saying it's impossible. Obviously, there's tons of people who get saved when they're adults, but if you're molded as a child, it's a ton easier to keep those habits with you and to be able to walk with God, through your teenage years and as you become an adult and be prepared for adulthood. So,
and that's not just our opinion. There are studies that show,
obviously,
that as a child, if you build a habit as a child, and I know teenagers don't like to hear it, but as a teenager, you are still a child. I get the eye rolls from my own kids. But you're still a child, and I have no idea where I was going with that. Someone else can take over.
I want to give out one point. I am the only single person here, and that's it. I'm just kidding. But what they're saying is very true. Like, me establishing myself in God needs to be my priority. No one else is my priority right now. Like, literally, the only thing, like, I'm still under my parents' household right now, so yes, I respect and obey them, but, like, that's my priority is God, and then underneath God is them. So, like, literally, it's just finding what God wants. And right now, I'm headed the direction in my career where I know He wants me to be. So, like, finding where God wants you to be is more important than almost anything.
Yeah.
Like, it's just being about God.
Yeah. It's kind of the whole day thing. It kind of just brings back to that: a prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on, and are punished. It's just one of those things that don't walk down a path that you're not ready for and not prepared for, and that you haven't prayed about and you haven't sought the Lord about, and hope it's gonna work out well.
Yeah.
But if I can say, of all things, there are individuals that never want to get married. More power to you. I know a few. If you have any plans to get married, start now, daily, ask God for the individual. And if you've got requests, God wants specific requests. I can remember as a teenager in middle school having an evangelist come in for chapel, or high school, I should say. Wow. But coming in for chapel and very adamantly saying that he remembers as a young person being told to pray. If he wanted a beautiful wife, he needed to ask for it. And so he prayed every day for a beautiful wife. You know what I did? I prayed every day for a beautiful wife. Guess what? God gave me one. If you've got a request, ask Him now. Ask Him every day.
I prayed to be tall. And I'm not joking. I prayed every day from, like, when I was in first grade to, like, 8th grade when I was tall to be tall. And it happened. So praise the Lord, literally. Like,
Stop talking, Josh.
Stop talking.
That's what God said. Here.
Anyway, no, this is a good time. I want to remind you that these guys love you. They care about you. They're saying things that you need to hear, that you ought to listen to and heed, because again, it's wisdom from God's word. They love you and care about you. And I would just read that verse one more time. A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold. Build a life of character, a life of testimony, a life that people can look at and see that you've made a difference for the cause of Christ. All right, love you guys. Okay, nice. It's a little bit longer than last time.
Yeah, I know. We really got going.
We skipped the whole section.
Yeah.
Talked about two things.
That means when you add a person, especially a long-winded one.
It was good.
You're annoying.